So needless to say, I don't remember my youth. And I was raised at the age of 3 by a stepfather who I just recently lost this last month. And he did beat me at times. He was an extremely strong man. And a lot of us have dealt with traumas in our youth. Okay. So I was put on this Ritalin, and by 12, my mother took me off the Ritalin because she said I wasn't disabled no more. She didn't like it. And the next few years was wild, to say the least, and I was in trouble quite a bit. By 17, I joined the United States Marine Corps. And for the next 4 years, I was in the Marines. And let me back up. When we were in junior high and high school, we used to do headbutt competitions. We would literally headbutt each other. I kid you not. And you would try to see who can get the best sound, the best pop. It was crazy now that I think about it. And due to my size, I got up to 252 pounds. And this is relevant to the story down the line. In high school, I was one of the big students, and I provided security for some of the teachers, and I provided security for some of the security there at our high school in Sacramento, California. So after joining the Marine Corps, I got out, did basic Marine Corps stuff. I was a heavy machine gunner, but I became a driver with the Humvees. And we had a lot of fights, and I actually have a forehead injury. And I don't remember how it happened because I was drunk. We believe I fell flat on my face, and the next morning I woke up and I had black gloves on, and it sealed my head shut. I was fortunate. Blood was all over the place. So 24 years later, 2014 comes around and my thumbs get numb. So I start going to the VA and asking for help. Now, if you remember, Arizona had those 40 deaths at the VA. This was when they were having communication problems, and they were changing over their communication protocols and processes. And so by the time 2015 rolls around, I'm having an awfully hard time with the VA. And they were saying that me coming to them over my sickness, as I'm losing a lot of weight, they were saying I need to eat more. It's in my head, and you need to quit stressing. And my hormones were barely above the level of acceptability. And at that time, I didn't know about hormones at all. So the next few months, I started getting incredibly sick, and I got down to 135 pounds. And I'd have to sit there and hold my head up, sometimes with both hands, because I was now getting down to about 135, 137 pounds. And it got so bad that my mom decided to move in with me and help feed me and help cook. I was on 2 canes by now, and I was definitely dying. I believe I was drinking some poisonous water, and I was sleeping under a bad telephone pole that was really close to my area. So I believe I'm sensitive to electromagnetic frequencies. Plus, I was exposed to Gulf War, what we believe is Gulf War illness. I was not in the Gulf War, but I was cleaning the gear. So my nephew got me onto a phone and got me into Gmail and online to start studying what was going on and try to figure things out. And I got to some cancer Facebook pages, and Judy Mikovits was on and off in the news because we're here in Reno, Nevada. That's where I live right now. And that got me to Whole Foods, started eating some better foods. And one of the people at Whole Foods, they were seeing me there a lot because I was petrified. I was afraid to die. Mom would shop there with me. And they finally told me, you got to break away from the VA or you're just going to die. Because I was awfully thin. I was emaciated. and they gave me this magazine called Healthy Beginnings. And in the back of it, you have your acupuncturists, your chiropractors, your naturopaths, your homeopaths, your Reiki instructors, and energy healers. And a lot of the hospital people, quite a few of them look at that as your quacks, you know, as one doctor called Dr. Clearfield a shaman. And a lot of that's not accepted. But I saw Dr. Clearfield, he was a DO. Some people recommended I get to a DO because they can figure out what's going on. And so I looked him up online, and it said he was VA certified with the Veterans Hospital. And neither one of us know how that got there, but it was there. And so I still, as a Marine, wanted to trust my country, wanted to trust the VA. It's all I knew. And so I went to Dr. Clearfield because that was on there. And then when I got here, there was another veteran that was already here that told me to trust him. And he did labs on me and found out my testosterone was extremely low and my estrogen was extremely high. And I had no hair. And by now, the VA had diagnosed me with lipodystrophy, discoid lupus, and amongst the mood disorder secondary to general condition and other stuff that I was already dealing with. So Dr. Clearfield gave me my first hormone shot, and that was at the beginning of 2016. And then he started acupuncture on me twice a week because I was having problems breathing. And I remember when I was sick, I had to count sheep to keep on rhythm of breathing because just the neurology was off so bad, and I was so sick. So I'm breaking away from the VA now, and I went to an eye appointment, and I got to a off-site VA eye clinic. Is that what's high? Okay, there we go. Somehow I got muted. So I
My bad.
Tandy Leather saw this Vietnam veteran there, and he explained to me that they had a leather program at the VA hospital. It's recreational therapy. And so I started doing therapy at the VA, and I almost didn't go back. I was really mad at the VA. I almost died there. But the vets welcomed me back in, and Carrie Fritz, the recreational therapist, said I didn't have to get a consult from my primary care doctor. Otherwise, I wouldn't have done it. So I started doing some leather, and I found out about Tina Draculich, who's a Gold Star mom. She lost her son in combat. And I started volunteering with her. And it was the first time I got out of the house, per se, besides the hospital, in 24 years. And so as I'm starting to volunteer for her with what we call the combat paper program, we make paper out of combat uniforms, the old-fashioned way. I started to ask Dr. Clearfield if I could volunteer for him. And he said yes. And little did I know that that would lead into what is happening now. He let me go to a NOMA conference, Nevada Osteopathic Medical Association, here at the Northern Nevada Medical Hospital. And Dr. John Donaldson was speaking at that conference on suicide. And I remember Doc leaning over, say, see, he's talking about pills. He's not talking about hormones. And that impressed me about Dr. Clearfield still being interested in solving this and working on this, what he perceived and believes is the right way. And when I left that conference, I asked Doc, why didn't I kill myself? I was so sick for so many months. You know, I wanted to know why I didn't kill myself. And that led me into volunteering at the VA and working and volunteering with Doc And I started to find interest in this medical field. And then he started to teach me about the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, and how they took over medicine and what they started to do and some of the corruption and that whole process. I had no idea. And so I started to learn about the 14 out of 21 veterans who were killing themselves every day in America, weren't going to the VA. So we technically didn't even know where they were. And we believe 60 to 70% of these veterans who kill themselves every day for 20 years now, it's every day, it's still going on. They're not combat. That's what freaked me out per se. I couldn't understand why. Why are all these non-combat veterans killing themselves? These are the strongest men and women we have per se in America. And I know many of them that started out extremely strong. When they get out, they're per se broken. So as I'm working at the VA, I started to go to the VA and just volunteer without being an actual volunteer. And I started showing up and helping people and helping vets, saying, hey, do you know about, osteopathic medicine? Because even some of the employees at the VA who were veterans, they were sick too. They were having problems. So I did my best to get some of them to Dr. Clearfield because I believed in his medicine. And this is when I started to wonder why and what the difference was between allopathic medicine and osteopathic medicine. And I realized they were pushing the pills. And then I also started to study after learning with Judy Mikovits and her book, The Plague. I started to realize that there was some similarities there with the anthrax vaccine. And the anthrax vaccine was developed at Fort Detrick, and they started on veterans in the 70s. Okay. I had actually gotten a letter from the military that I was experimented on with the anthrax vaccine in the late 80s. I find it awfully ironic that the early 70s, they started this anthrax process. So I told Dr. Clearfield I was getting pretty popular at the VA, and I knew the director. And now even some of the doctors were talking to me about the problems at the VA, and they were coming up and they trusted me. And I came to Doc and I was like, man, these guys, they're telling me what's going on with the director and what she's doing wrong. And I'm, how do I handle this? And he said, and I quote, don't be a politician. I'll never forget that. Don't be a politician. Go in there and fix it. Solve it. And that's where solutions on suicide, solving suicide came to play. I see things from a guerrilla warfare standpoint, from a Marine standpoint, from a traumatic patient standpoint, from a patient standpoint, not from a medical student, not from a doctor standpoint, not from a quote unquote psychiatrist or psychologist standpoint. And I left that day pretty blown away. Really? He wants me to solve suicide? And then I started questioning why no one thinks you can solve it. So I started to see what I think is wrong with the suicide process right now. And that led me down listening to these conferences that you guys all speak at. And I started to realize that we're just now learning about the enteric nervous system, the gut and the heart. And then I was studying Joe Dispenza, Greg Braden, and doing massive amounts of studying. And I realized, and it hit me pretty hard, because I experienced suicide ideation myself for a long time. I thought it was normal. I thought all of us thought about it, especially when I was sick. But I believe if you kill yourself, you got to come back and do it all over again. And you may be in a worse situation than you are now. There's just no way I was going to do that because I had a really hard life. So when Dr. Clearfield worked on me, it was if the ADD and the PTSD and my symptoms from traumatic brain injury subsided. I still would have incidences. I still would want to sit with focus towards a door or being able to escape. I still would get a little sensitive around crowds. It's still a little difficult, but it was stabilized. And so for the first time in my life, I'm like stabilized. And it was absolutely mind blowing. So I'm like, well, if it can work for me, how come this isn't working for others? Now, without getting into the politics and conspiracies, because a lot of them we know aren't theories no more, Big Pharma has heavily influenced pills, vaccines, big agriculture. And Dr. Thomas Cowan has a saying that he believes there's only 4 ways you can get sick: accident or injury, nutritional excess or nutritional deficiency, poisons, toxins, and chemicals, and electromagnetic frequencies and or electromagnetic radiation. And this is when I started to put 2 and 2 together with all these veterans that are coming back from war, not combat. And they're coming back super sick. I work with a lot of them. And that's when I started to go, okay, what's the similarities? Well, they're all eating the same foods. They're all be given the same pills. They're all getting the same vaccines. But yet the United States government came up with the term post-traumatic stress disorder. So you, the patient, are stressed out. You, the patient, have the problem. Rather than asking what's causing the depression. When I ask people what causes suicidal ideation, 95% of them say depression. Okay, well, what causes depression? Well, what do you mean? It's a mental disorder. I believe bad food causes depression. I believe certain traumatic brain injuries causes depression. I believe lack of nutrition and supplements in the proper ratios causes depression. And experiencing this myself, I learned that the body compensates in a beautiful way. So as you're getting sick, family members and friends might start to notice it, but you're adjusting and you're adapting to your sickness, and the body's doing the best it can to repair itself or fix itself. And as Dr. Bahari beautifully said, he believed, and I never even heard this, that autoimmune in essence was the lack of something in the body or too much of something. Rather than the body attacking itself, it's lacking something or it has excessive something. And so I really got involved with the supplements with Dr. Clearfield, as you can see behind me. This is my little small office here where I come and I listen to Doc and I listen to the nurses and some of the patients talk about certain situations and what's going through. And going through the art process, going through the supplemental process, going through organic food process, stopping all vaccines. I stopped all of them, even the flu, and I very rarely get sick. And I got back to God and I get involved and I have a mission. And it's as if I'm experiencing post-traumatic growth. And I can't tell you guys how important a lot of these classes are with you guys and how I understand a lot of what you're saying, but I don't understand the words and I don't understand the subjects. And it's hard, but it's doable. But in a weird way, I understand from a patient standpoint and an advocate standpoint. And so I started to follow Dr. Pamela Wiebold. And Dr. Pamela Wiebold has gotten into Dr. Suicide. And I just recently purchased the movie Do No Harm. And I also purchased the license and the rights so that I can get that in our group. And I'll do my best to include it. I'm sorry, I'm not good with slides and technical issues. But we believe doctors are killing themselves at a rate roughly around anywhere from 35 to 40 per 100,000. Veterans are roughly around 30 per 100,000. And civilians are around 14 per 100,000. And there are some countries around the world that have 0.5, less than one person per 100,000. So my next endeavor is to study why some of these countries, besides philosophical beliefs or religious beliefs, why are some of these countries not killing themselves like others are? And one of the highest countries, Guyana, I believe they're killing themselves at 30 per 100,000. Now, I'm going to read some facts and figures from the Do No Harm film by Robin Simone. And because I was able to get the educational discussion guide. Right now, suicide accounts for 26% of deaths among physicians aged 25 to 39, as compared to 11% of us out there in the civilian world. One recent study found that only half of depressed interns obtained mental health services. Now imagine if instead of obtaining mental health services, we were doing studies and checking their hormones and checking their family situations and checking their spiritual situations, checking their mold or their food situations at home. What chemicals are they putting on their bodies? That's from the Burnout and Suicidal Ideation Among U.S. Medical Students study. Admissions to teaching hospitals increased by 50% in 1990 to 2010, but the number of doctors in training only increased by 10%. This is the resident workload. Let's treat the disease, not just the symptom. Comment on effect of the 2011 versus 2003 duty hour regulation, compliant models on sleep duration, training education, and continuity of patient care among internal medicine house staff by Laura Goyton, MD, Kenneth M. Ludemeyer, MD, from the Journal of American Medical Association. 45.8% of physicians reported experiencing at least one symptom of burnout. In 2015, in the Medscape Physician Lifestyle Report, 46% of all physicians responded that they had burnout, which is a substantial increase since the 2013 Lifestyle Report, in which burnout was reported in slightly under 40% of respondents. Among internists and family physicians who responded to the Medscape survey, burnout rates rose from 43 to 50% in 2 years. The source is preventing physician suicide, the role of family, colleagues, and organized medicine. Then there was a study of more than 4,000 medical students at 7 schools, found that half of all students experienced burnout while in medical school. Approximately 1 of every 9 students reported having suicidal thoughts while in school. So once again, imagine if we start looking at this differently and we start to test students for their hormones. We start to look at this physically, not mentally. It could change the dynamics of the entire program. Male physicians have a 70% higher suicide rate than males in other professions. This blew me away. Female physicians die at a suicide at a 400% higher rate than females in any other profession. That's just mind-blowing. Among physicians, risk for suicide increases when mental health conditions go unaddressed, and self-medication occurs as a way to address anxiety, insomnia, and other distressing symptoms. Although self-medicating mainly with prescription medications may reduce some symptoms, the underlying health problem is not effectively treated. Boom. This can lead to a tragic outcome. Source, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. It's very rare that you hear a suicide prevention. I don't even like the term prevention. I don't like the term awareness. I want to solve this. I want to end this. I want to fix this. And I know we're not supposed to say cure this, but we have to adjust our thought process and believe that this is fixable. When you look at suicide as a cancer, I believe there's hope, because that's what I believe it is. I believe it's a physical sickness between the gut and the heart, and the gut and the heart communicate to the brain. It's not the other way around. If you think you're going to go to McDonald's and you're going to watch Fox News or MSNBC News all night long and then meditate your way into health, it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. Doctors commit suicide at a rate more than twice the national average. So I know how hard you guys work. I watched Dr. Clearfield go through some serious stuff. And I know what you guys are going through, but he taught me a lesson early on about dancing. He's like, you got to get out there. And he was talking to me. He didn't want me to do this. He's like, you got to get out there and dance. You got to get out there and do something. You got to have a hobby. Go to church. Go to a veteran group. Go to an organization. How many doctors isolate? And then how many doctors start getting sick? And you deal with your own selves. And you, quote unquote, medicate yourselves. It's not a good situation to be in. So when you start to see this as physical, you start to realize that it can be, I believe, corrected by labs. I don't know too many healthy people who kill themselves. I just don't. There's usually an underlying physical sickness, and hormones can go awry from what I call micro abrasions. So in traumatic brain injury, you have macro abrasions and micro abrasions. So imagine someone holds a gun to your head and it's a revolver, and you saw 5 bullets in the chamber. So you know there's bullets in there, and they pull the trigger. By the grace of God, the bullet doesn't go off. It's a dud. It's a misfire. But you heard it or felt it. That's what we believe is, quote unquote, PTSD. What you see or what you felt, even though it may have not happened. Dr. Mark L. Gordon believes that's a microabrasion. And a lot of these vets, law enforcement, you doctors, may be experiencing microabrasions. They're very hard to find on x-rays. Macroabrasions are the head injuries, are the explosions that are what we call danger close. Danger close could be 100 yards off with a very large bomb, and bam, you get hit and it rocks you. And then you've got the people that are far away that just get a little bit of a vibration, or they get the dust, or they get the poisons, or they get the toxins. So one of the hardest things to do when you have pride and you're in law enforcement, military, and the medical profession is to ask for help. It's ridiculously hard. And as this gentleman says, Richard Gunderman, he's a reporter. And I believe he lost his wife to suicide. He said, medicine is not a job. It is not even a career. At its heart, medicine is a calling. When it comes to physician burnout, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound to cure. We must begin early in medical education to help medical students and residents explore and connect with a sense of calling to the profession. Even late in their careers, physicians need to recall that they are summoned to something older, larger, and nobler than themselves. They must never forget that a career in medicine represents one of life's greatest opportunities to become fully human through service to others.
Wow, that's heavy.
And I recently just had a coach question me on what I'm doing because I haven't reached out to her because I just lost my stepfather who raised me in the last month. And then when I was at a business conference, my biological father, who was watching my dog, my 16-year-old border collie, he got caught by the security cameras kicking and kneeing my dog, which I didn't know he was doing. He's dealing with dementia. And I just recently put down this 16-year-old border collie here at the Clearfield Medical Group with everybody here because he's become our mascot. And this coach of mine, she's like, "Hey, Joel, it's okay to use your own tools on yourself." Boom. And I never thought about that. You get tunnel vision. Like one of those doctors in Do No Harm said, you just go to work, you go to work, you go to work, you go to work, you go to work, and you stay stuck at work. And you just don't go walk around, smell the roses and talk to someone. You don't go to the preacher and say, "Hey, I just boom, 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 just in 1 month." And so solutions on suicide to me are physical in nature. And I think if we could remember that and come up with physical means to adjust and or track our hormones, to track our home situation, feng shui, the energy, to monitor our Wi-Fi. I now turn my Wi-Fi off at night and I turn my Bluetooth off at night. And I used to wear an Apple Watch because I wanted to monitor my heart, my sleeping situation. And then I put on an iFit. And 3 nights in a row after I put on the Apple Watch, I started getting those heart palpitations and I couldn't sleep. And it was like I couldn't breathe again. And it was like, oh God, here we go. It's coming again. It's coming again. And so what I would do is I'd wake up and I'd take a shower. And then I'd be in the shower and I can't breathe. And it's just like, oh, it's just like, here it is again. Well, I didn't realize it at the time, but I was taking off the iFit and taking off the Apple Watch so I could take a shower. And I'd leave them off and I'd be able to go back to sleep. And it was just 3 days. And 3 days later, I was like, oh, really? Could it be? And the next night, I left both of them off. And boom, that's when I started to believe, oh, there's a little something more to electromagnetic frequencies and radiation than what I thought. Next is spirituality or community. It's huge. This is, essence of mission. Do No Harm talks about these new students that are coming up, the medical students, the new doctors, especially with COVID, especially with corruption, especially with special interest. And let's be honest, trillions of dollars involved. You guys are on the front lines. And so us military, we're on the front lines too. And ironically, we're all being censored. All of us, even the active duty military. So I have a saying that I advocate for military veterans first, second, and third responders. And the Japanese were the ones that started to study the third response. They believe that's where we kill ourselves. Second response is the doctors and the nurses. Third response, in essence, would be FEMA or Red Cross or the ART. After you were bleeding and the first responders picked you up, got you to the second response at the hospital. Now the third response is what they call the emotional response. Now what do I do? This is where people freak out. And could it be because the hormones went awry during this traumatic experience? That's what I think it is. And a lot of these veterans were coming back from war and they were living alone. A lot of them. And they would eat at the restaurants. You know, you just go eat at McDonald's, you go eat at restaurants. And so you're eating crap food and now you're not sleeping too well. And now you're drinking coffee and you're drinking sodas and you're drinking crap and your body starts to compensate. So I think it's physical. I don't think it's mental. And I plan on studying the enteric nervous system in relationship to the gut and getting with Dr. John Burgess for the March conference and seeing what we can come up with. And I also plan on starting an LLC that can respond to first, second, and third responders and active duty military and veterans, and come up with some type of a system where we monitor ourselves. We don't trust no one but ourselves. And we don't trust no one but our brothers and our sisters in the military. It's huge. But even then, we don't reach out. Same thing with doctors. How many of you out there might be sad or lonely or just absolutely disgusted or pissed off with what's going on, but we don't reach out to each other? It's crazy. If anything, that's where the mental comes into play. I'm not downplaying psychology or psychiatry. I believe that is for immediate traumatic experiences when the trauma happens, per se, the first stage, first response. And that's usually in combat. That's usually in war. That's usually when the trauma happened. But it's never really followed up. And right now, I believe our country is in dire need of friendship, hugs, group outings. I know some of you might not agree with that because of social distancing, but I believe in herd immunity, and I believe in God, and I believe in proper hormones, and I believe in good food, and I believe in community, and I believe in exercise, and I believe in a mission, and I believe in supplements, as you can see behind me. They do wonders. I believe in mushrooms. I do coffee every morning with ghee butter and coconut oil and mushrooms, Ceylon cinnamon, cocoa, matcha, ashwagandha. I do a lot of the homeopathic, what I believe is homeopathic processes to keep me stabilized. And I believe it's keeping my discoid lupus, per se, at bay. And I eat a lot of fat. I eat avocados, I eat nuts, coconut oil. I don't eat a lot of dairy. I don't eat a lot of meat, but I eat some. And so in essence, I'm asking you guys for support. I started to call myself a professional patient because a coach said that's what I sounded like. And 50% of the people hate that term, and 50% of people laugh at it and love it. And we're all supposed to be patients. You're supposed to go every 3 to 6 months. That includes doctors. That includes you guys. So make sure you do your organic food, do your hobbies, get out there, get involved in the community, go to a church that you might like. Even if you do the church online, you don't have to go somewhere. It's better, I believe. But even doing it online, do the Zooms, have your hormones checked. And I know it's easy for me to say, a lot of you guys know that, and it's easy for me to assume that, but that can be a dangerous situation for me to assume that. And the same thing with veterans, the same thing with military, law enforcement, dispatchers, social workers, teachers, preachers, pastors, counselors, caretakers, we're all taking up the burden of big pharma right now, and we know it. And you guys are absolutely maxed out. And I've watched Dr. Clearfield deal with big pharma, deal with supply issues. And this is before the supply issues happened. I've watched how insurance and government regulates and controls certain supplements and medications. And they make things absolutely almost impossible for you guys. And so Pamela Weibold and Minnie are doing their best to take this on and get you guys back to your Hippocratic oath of do no harm. But we got to stop doing harm to ourselves. And I have a lot of numbers on this educational guide, what we call resources, with the National Suicide Hotline, National Alliance on Mental Illness, the Institute for Healthcare Improvement, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, breaking the culture of silence on physician suicide, creating a safety net, preventing physician suicide, reducing the stigma. Faculty speak out about suicide rates among medical students and physicians, preventing suicide in physicians, residents, and medical students, collateral damage, the impact of patient suicide on the physician, and an interactive screening type program that's available for a lot of us so that you guys can use this even with your patients. And it's one of the beautiful things about Dr. Clearfield. He spends a lot of time with each patient and he asks them those personal questions. How you doing at home? How's your sex life? Do you go out? Do you have an air filter? Do you have a water filter? Do you open the windows? How do you sleep? Do you have any friends? Do you have any hobbies? What do you do? Boom. Be surprised how people don't do much. And I was one of them. And now I do a lot of research and I get stuck on this research and I can do 3, 4, 6 hours straight. And every now and then, Doc will say, hey, go take a walk, get out of the house, go do something, go see your nephew, go visit some family. Used to play with my dog and I'll work on getting another one again. Pets are amazing. Okay.
Joe, can you give us some tips or some things to listen for? Somebody comes in and they have this on their mind. What are some like keys that we should that perk our ears up?
Just when I was asking about all those questions, I think you have to almost do what they do in Israel. They profile people.
Some people might not like it, but look at the first 2 seconds and they're already making fun of vegans. It was like,
I was like, I don't want to watch.
Did you get it?
Dr. Fielding, thank you. Okay, go ahead.
They profile. So in essence, you're going to have to profile your patient. And you're going to have to ask them these questions about their home, friends, what it's been like. And it's absolutely okay to say and ask Have you thought about suicide? Do you think about it? Has it come across your mind? Part of being assist certified, which means I can assist law enforcement to talk someone down, is they've taught us it's okay to ask them, literally, are you suicidal? But you got to profile them. And 9 times out of 10, they're going to be depressed. 2, you might want to look at their arms. Literally look at their arms, see if they're cutting themselves. Some people do. I still believe that labs is super important. High sugar count could show they're drinking a lot. Have they had a traumatic experience? Like myself right now, I lost a father. I have another father who hurt my dog, and then I lost my dog. So the psychiatrist I just went and had an evaluation from, she was concerned. And she told me about the, areas around town that I can go. But I talked to you, Doc, and I talked to Karina and Christy, and I keep my routines going. So if your patients don't have those routines, there's some way we got to figure that out.
So I personally, I don't, I'm not all that comfortable with somebody in my office saying, I once had a young girl, she was about 18, and she said she came in because she wanted to lose weight. And somewhere along the line, she said that she was thinking about killing herself. What do we do then? It's almost out of the blue. Is there a protocol?
By law, I believe you're supposed to report it. To be honest, the 1-800, the National Suicide Helpline, it's not as difficult as what you think. All doctors should have that number somewhere close. And you literally, I think, rather than reporting it, if you're a doctor and you call the suicide hotline and you take care of it right then and there, they'll talk with both of you. They'll keep both of you on the line. They'll go through the process. They'll get her or him the help they need. And usually they put you on the 72-hour hold. Some states have a 96 hours, some have 72 hours, some have 24 hours. Just depends. But there are laws in certain states where you are required to report that, for sure. Now, if you're talking to them as a doctor and you ask them if they've had suicidal ideation, that's different than them saying, I want to kill myself or I'm suicidal. It's like, yeah, I don't want to date no more. I don't want to go out of the house no more. My husband's doing this, or I'm just sad all the time. This is where you as a doctor, I believe, have to do labs and figure out their hormones. I still think it's in the hormones. And I think it's in the supplements. And I think it's in the food. And you're one of the best I've seen do this. So to come up with that type of a protocol, I think is what we need more than looking at the mental per se. You can't, you got to go through like some pretty intense FBI type or Israel type classes to profile someone to know they're suicidal. And even they have a hard time. Those are suicidal bombers. That's a little different. So if we're going to try to screen someone who's suicidal, it's almost impossible. It really is, unless you think of it physically, unless you actually grab the arm and you touch, if the patient allows you to touch them, especially as an osteopath with manipulation, that's energy flowing into the body. That's saying, hey, you're not cutting yourself, are you? No, I wouldn't do that. So right there's a response. So you can read that response. If they're like, and they just look at themselves and they're kind of like, well, okay, well, what do you mean? Well, it's a tough situation, Doc.
Hey, Joel, you had mentioned earlier about how military guys and doctors too have a tendency not to reach out, okay? But I think this organization we have right here tonight is a perfect example of reaching out to do one, to share what we might have discovered over a lifetime. And the other is, can you please help us? Because I still don't know a whole bunch. So I think that's what we're doing here. We're reaching out to each other. It's an extremely honest organization. And I think that type of idea is going to expand. We're going to share with each other. So that's what we're doing.
Okay.
Absolutely agree.
I have this from the Suicide Prevention Hotline. 6 questions to ask if you're concerned about someone wishing to harm themselves. Question 1, have you wished you were dead or wished you could go to sleep and not wake up in the past month? Yes or no? Number 2, have you actually had any thoughts about killing yourself? If the answer is yes to questions 2, then go to 3, 4, and 5. 3 is, have you thought about how you might do this? 4, have you had any intention of acting on these thoughts of killing yourself as opposed to you having the thoughts, but you definitely would not act on them? The answer is yes on that one. That's a high risk. Number 5, have you started to work or worked out the details of how to kill yourself? Do you intend on carrying out this plan? And number 6, have you done anything, started to do anything, or prepared to do anything to end your life? Such as collecting pills, obtaining a gun, giving away valuables, writing a will or suicide note, held a gun but changed your mind. Any yes answer needs further care, and there's a suicide prevention hotline or to emergency personnel. You can call 911, or I can put the phone number. It's an 800 number in the chat here. 800-273-8255.
Correct.
That's the line. You can text it at 741-741. So at least we have some resources and some questions. I unfortunately had a personal experience. I had a lady friend who had a lot of sort of questionable mental grounding, and I didn't recognize at the time. About a month before she took her life, she took out a life insurance policy. Then she made a will, and she started divesting her jewelry and her sort of worldly goods. She was a nurse anesthetist, and she took drugs home from the operating room. And it was New Year's Eve 2007. She injected herself and took her life. So I always think about that. There were the warning signs that I didn't recognize. So we're sort of I'm sort of acutely my ears perk up if someone says any type of tendency towards that. So anybody else have anything to add? Any other personal experiences? Share anything? This is not our usual topic, but it's it's important every once in a while to sort of step outside the medical model and talk about some of our own feelings and our own our personal things that have happened to us along the way.
I have a few comments. This is
Yes.
Dr. Ortel.
Yes, please.
So I was OBGYN. So I had one patient that was suicidal who was a breast cancer survivor. And we decided to go ahead and give her estrogen. And she had been to multiple psychiatrists, nothing was helping. And we gave her estrogen and she was functional. So just chalk one up for hormones there. I saw Lyme patients and I gave IV modified Myers in the office. And every Lyme and mold patient was told that if they felt suicidal, please call in right away and we would see you, hopefully that day. And if we couldn't, we would definitely see you the next morning before the office started. So I would give my modified Myers. I gave it in pieces. I didn't give it in a long drip. So I gave it in a slow push. And I found that if the families would bring them in babbling, sobbing, they were unable to articulate, but they could nod. Yeah, they, felt like killing themselves. And I would give them this modified Myers and they would stop babbling and stop sobbing and stop crying. And I would ask them, where did the sensation go? Are you keeping it down? Are you pushing it down and you feel it like in your chest or something? And they would say, no, it's gone. So that was vitamin C, B complex, methyl B12, magnesium, and glutathione. And I will tell you that I don't think it was one thing, and that for every single person, it was a little bit different what was helping. That was just my impression. And yeah, and I lost one Lyme patient, was no longer my patient, but she did write me a 36-page letter before she committed suicide, but we couldn't find her.
Wow.
We called the police to go check on her, but they couldn't find her. And then we saw in the paper that she'd committed suicide. So those are my experiences with suicidal ideation.
Wow.
So comments on first on the hormone aspect. So estrogen drives blood flow to the brain, so it would improve it does improve cognition and sort of mental focus and mental capacity. I don't usually recommend it without knowing, the complete status, but in a situation like that, I suppose there's really probably nothing nothing to be lost. That's number one. Number two, in the military VA studies from suicide, it appears that low testosterone levels play a culprit in over 40% of the suicide, the completed suicides. So that's also something to be cognizant of. Number three, Dr. Ortel, it's always been my understanding that vitamin C would lyse glutathione molecules, and so I give them separately. I do the Myers cocktail, and then the glutathione afterwards, but in a separate sort of.
Right. Each one of my ingredients was given separately.
Okay.
And I'll find I believe there's a physician suicide hotline, if I remember correctly. I'll let me just look it up right now. Right. And the first time I called a hotline, I was scared. You've got all these thoughts in your head of what they're going to do. Are they going to send someone to you? It's just not that easy to call up the suicide hotline and say, hey, I got a patient who's suicidal. Can you send a cop to him? It doesn't always work that way. It's not that easy. And cops are overwhelmed per se. And they don't just fly on out to a house to go see this. Sometimes they'll say no. So you and the suicide hotline have to deal with it. And they're awesome at their job. They'll chat with you. They'll text with you. They'll email with you. They'll stay on the line as long as they have to. And there was some rumors out there that they were overwhelmed and they were getting too many phone calls. So they opened up more centers around America. And Mary Elaine, she also talked about the Catholic Association. A lot of the churches can help you, and a lot of organizations around your town. You have your city, your county, and your state organizations. You have the suicide prevention clinics and suicide prevention 501c3s throughout a lot of states now. So there's a massive amount of help out there. There really is. But like you said, Doc, getting to that person and profiling that person to try to figure out, you almost have to ask. It's super tough. It's super tough. And maybe asking family members, maybe implementing some type of asking your patient if before they come in, the family can do a questionnaire. What does the family see? Has the family noticed anything different? That might be something new we could implement. I think people are looking for connection, but some of them that are in that deep, late stage that they're going to kill themselves and they're doing all those processes, they're sick. I still feel they're physically sick, and that's a hard spot to be in. That's hard for us to find that out and get to them.
Hi, Joel, this is really very, very timely and a very good presentation. Thank you. This is Mary Elaine. I've taught nursing students, and I've been a psych clinical instructor for many years. And what always surprises me is the amount of kids and young girls that are cutters, and the family knows nothing about it. Or they think they're going through a phase, or what have you. I have a very close friend who lost their daughter to suicide 5 years ago. She was suffering from bipolar disorder for many, many years and had been on a cadre of psychotropic medications, and but yet was functional and went back to school and got a master's degree. But was, and very, very intelligent, extremely bright, but was trying to taper off some of the psychotropics. And I think this is also a big area that, physicians don't really have a handle on. I was on a call the other day with a family, a 17-year-old who was trying to get off Effexor. And so they lowered the dose of the Effexor. The psychiatrist lowered the dose of the Effexor from 150 to 112.5. And within 3 weeks, she was psychotic. So, it's a slippery slope, and really you have to know the biochemistry of what's happening and be disciplined when they're not only changing medications, but watching dietary factors like you spoke of, because it's a multifactorial situation. So it's exercise and it's diet and it's, really that aware, I know you don't like the word awareness, but teaching people to really be able to articulate what's happening within their body and to be able to describe it to the provider is extremely helpful. So I thank you for your talk. It's really important.
Thank you very much. And I agree with the awareness. Lately, I've been paying attention more when I talk to people. And I take words more serious than I used to. But someone like that, you guys have your plates full. You really do. And some of you are some of the best doctors I know. in America. And this has been going on for a long time. It's an extremely difficult situation to tackle. And I'm honored to learn from you guys. And I eat a lot of chocolate. That's how I deal with this. I'll be honest. It's a tough situation, but someone's got to do it. And I'm going to keep looking ways to fix this.
Have you read Kelly Brogan's book, A Mind of Your Own?
No, I have not.
So Kelly Brogan is an American psychiatrist that has been very open about Big Pharma's contribution to mental health challenges and illnesses. And the book is out maybe 5 or 6 years, but it's a good read.
Thank you. No, I'm actually in her group. So I'll look for that. Thank you. I've been following her for a while. I've been following quite a few of what they call the disinformation dozen. I'll be honest. I've been studying a lot of them, and I do my best to study what works. So thank you.
Joe, can you walk us through, you're on your turn on the hotline, and the phone rings, and I call up and I say, my name's Bill and I'm thinking about killing myself. What are the steps? What do you do? What does that look like?
The first step is 9 times out of 10, you've got to get a hold of the suicide hotline. So you're going to have to talk to this person and say, I understand. I'm here to listen. I don't want you to do what you say you're going to do. And can you please stay on the line with me? And let's talk about this. Let's figure out why you want to kill yourself. And as you're doing that, you're trying to text or call the hotline. And if you call the hotline, you turn your volume down and you leave the phone on and let them hear you. And then you say, okay, John McEnroe, I know you're calling me from 775, and so you're giving them the number and the name. By your number, are you in Missouri? Are you here in Reno, Nevada? And you start to question them and let them know not even per se, let them know that you care and you want to help them any way possible. That's the start.
Is there a privacy issue with that? Sort of clandestinely giving a third party their phone, the person calling in phone number?
Wow.
I don't know the answer to that.
I don't either. That's a good.
I don't know if anybody else does.
That's a good question. I'll find that, as we were taught in the Marine Corps. I don't know that answer, but I will look into it and respond to you later. I don't think so. That's a good question. Wow.
Well, it would seem not. It would seem not, but you know the way things are.
If they are, if the person is presenting symptoms that they could be potentially a harm to themselves or others, that's when you're mandated. And so you have that, you have that flexibility to relay that because of that.
I believe so, especially as a doctor. Yeah, she's right.
Okay.
And you can put the person on mute and talk into the phone real quick and let the suicide hotline know what's going on. And they'll walk you through it if they have to. And they do have little suicide cards that can walk you through the ask, tell process. But each caller is individually different, and it depends on the level. It depends on, are they intoxicated? It depends on what's going on. And the longer you can keep them on the line, the less they are to be impulsive. Most of us are very impulsive. So especially if we have a gun at hand, or you've already tied up a noose, or you're on top of a roof, the longer you can keep them talking, the better.
What concerns me is, my friend's daughter went to Walmart and bought a gun, and nowhere was asked, a health history question, of course. And
Right.
within a half an hour drove back to her apartment, and her apartment complex, and was in the car outside and shot herself. So,
Right.
you're right. I think things can change on a dime, and part of the issue of a suicide prevention hotline is to talk people off that ledge.
Yeah. Yeah. I put myself in the position of what you just said. How could have we gotten to that lady? Like Dr. Clearfield said, how could have he intervened? And, we've been trying to figure that out for 30 years. So I'm trying to do anything I can that's different from what we've been doing for 30 years that hasn't worked. And right now, the only thing I see is looking at it physically and medically, getting those hormones checked, getting those labs checked, and reading those labs. They're more important. And you can't save everybody. That's a tough statement. This is where the community has to get involved. The government created the Prevents Panel. And in essence, what that was suicidology between the community, really getting the community involved. And now you're talking about your counselors, you're talking about your schools. The village, it takes a village. So it's just super difficult. It's super difficult. And, we're right here in Reno, Nevada. We're 50th in the United States for mental health. So you can only imagine what we hear here in town, and people like myself, it's pretty brutal. And we're second in the country for the worst drivers. So you see it on the road, you see the road rage. It's a systemic sickness. And I know a lot of people working on it, but mostly everybody works on this mental aspect. And I think we need to go physical faster. I think it's huge. So I don't think we should underplay being overweight or underweight, minimize the sugar intake, minimize the alcohol, start slowing down. If you're talking to your patient, tell them, hey, instead of doing 6 drinks, why don't you do 5? Why don't you chart them? Why don't you write them down? Why are you drinking? What's behind this drinking? What's going on? How can we get you to a group, not just a drinking group, but some other group? What did you used to do when you were a kid? What did you like to do when you were a kid? What type of sport or hobby did you do? I've had a couple people that I woke them up per se. It's like, oh, well, I used to do this and I used to do, well, why don't you get back to that? Why don't you try that? Those little things. It's becoming their a quick partner, a quick friend. It's more powerful than what we think. And I know you guys know that. It's just hard. But to have that suicide hotline available right away is important. There's no doubt, especially as a doctor, you should have it somewhere in your office, somewhere on your desk. Same thing with the physician hotline. I heard Dr. Pamela Weibold mention that a lot of doctors, they go out of state to another shrink so that they don't get caught per se. Your medical boards and so forth won't find out who or what happened to you. So there's ways around that. And like Dr. Burgess said, anybody here would just talk to any one of us. You can reach out. Dr. Clearfield's available. I'm available. I'll put my my email and my phone number in here now.
Since you brought up the issue of what you can do, how much you can do, where you lead people, one of the primary CYAs with anything dealing with this issue is to, number one, first of all, give them the national hotline, the helpline. That's primary. That's the first thing you do. If you've done that and you've tried that, then you're able to go through all the second, third, and fourth doors. But as far as the government goes and rules and regs on this, get them the hotline.
Yeah. Yeah. And I believe the hotline has more authority to call the law enforcement to come in and do a hard knock. So they say. And then there's people like myself that are assist qualified that are on a database, usually in your city or your state. And so the hotline knows those databases and they can get a hold of people like us and call us right away, and we can respond in relationship to the law enforcement.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I sent, this is the number for the National Suicide Hotline. The phone number, text is 741-741. You could always call 911.
Correct.
Couple of other comments just from Mary Elaine's patient there. So any of the medical doctors here who have any experience with Effexor and getting patients off of it, it's worse than heroin. It's worse than almost any narcotic. It's almost impossible. And we always have patients who go away for a weekend and they forget it. They're on it. By Sunday, they're calling. They're frantic that that they're going through withdrawal. By the way, it's the recommended treatment, number one recommended treatment by the American Academy of Clinical Endocrinologists for postmenopausal vasomotor systems, i.e. hot flashes. Number one is venlafaxine.
Wow.
So in my experience, what we need to do is they're on, say, 150 milligram doses. You need to have it compounded at 10 milligram intervals, anywhere from 1 week if they've been on it for less than 3 months to decreasing it by weekly if they've been on it for less than 3 months, and more than 3 months you don't decrease it monthly, 10 milligrams at a time. The commercial doses are 37.5, 75, and 150. And to go from 150 to 75 is usually there's a fairly severe reaction to withdrawal reaction, especially if they've been on it for more than 3 months. I tell my students if they ever prescribe it, I will haunt them for the rest of their life to never ever prescribe that one. I don't know if anybody else's experience is with that is similar. And if anybody has a comment on that one, of course, if they come in and they're on it, that's a different story.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put in the number now. 1-888-409-0141. That's the physician support line. I'll write that out.
It didn't pop up here. You must be on just on a single.
Oh, I haven't sent it yet.
Okay.
I don't type that fast. Oops.
Sorry, I get anxious,
Who you telling? To support. Oops. It's not a hotline, it's just a line. Okay, interesting. It's a psychiatrists helping our U.S. physician colleagues and medical students navigate the many intersections of our personal professional lives, free and confidential, no appointment necessary, open 7 days a week. It looks like 8 a.m. to 1 a.m. Eastern time. Geez, they can't man it for 24 hours. Okay, I'll follow up on that myself. And I want to get a hold of Pamela Weibold. And I was going to talk to you a little bit too, a possible breakout room or something. These people with the do no harm film are willing to come to classes or conferences and work with us in this process and tell us what they know.
We'll talk about it. We do have a breakout room available to us, in Vegas. So,
Okay,
okay.
excellent.
Anybody else have any comments, questions, experiences? I know this is a little bit different than our usual Tuesday night soirees, and it's a bit more sobering. But it's something that we probably all dealt with at some point or another.
Great.
And if not, next week, Dr. Felice Gersh will be back with another gynecological lecture of excellence. As you can see on the list behind here, she's on our program for Sunday at 2:30. Jacob Teitelbaum and Todd Bourne will be doing virtual presentations. And Dr. Peter McCullough we still don't have a firm time on him. He's a fly in, fly out. So the Saturday program will look a little different than it's showing here. Also, Dr. Pauline Tai has dropped out, and he does not wish to do any virtual or pre-recorded program. So we still have a couple of openings left. If anybody wishes to make a presentation, Mary Elaine, I have your stuff done. I didn't forget about you.
Good.
And we're pretty confident we'll be getting the AMA and AOA credits for this. But we need those of you who are speakers. I need all your information. I need your objectives. I need your references. I need a picture. I need that conflict of interest. If you've sent it in already, thank you. If not, please get it to me as soon as you can. I have a February 1st deadline for the AMA to get all that information in. So it's coming up.
You have a question, Doc, in the chat?
Do I?
Yeah. What's the medicine?
Oh, the medicine. No, venlafaxine, Effexor.
Oh, okay.
It's the one that Mary Elaine had mentioned, and the psychiatrist dropped it from 150 to 112.5, and the patient was it took a couple of weeks for the patient to become suicidal. So yeah, it's an SSRI plus an SNRI, and it's patients seem to be very calm on it while they're on it, but to try to get off of it, it's nearly impossible. So, okay, any other questions, comments?
Also, Prestique, the Desvenla vaccine, getting off of it.
Right, I don't have that much experience with that one, more with the venlafaxine, but you have that same experience, Dave?
Yeah, I think I've had a couple patients say that given a couple days and they were, ready to crawl out of their skin.
Mm-hmm. I mean, probably any drug in that, in that category, SSRI plus SNRI will be probably have the same effect. So, Dr. Burgess, I'm sure you have something to say.
Well, I do. Because one of my absolute best friends, who was a Vietnam vet, went through a funky time, but was put on Effexor, and he said, "I've never felt like this in my life. I feel like I want to kill myself." And he was dead within a few days. And the Effexor, then was considered, it's like, oh my God. I just had bad vibes about it. And he was dealing with the VA and all that jazz. But the way he said, I have never felt like this in my life. I feel like I want to kill myself. And I feel pretty sure it was linked to the effexor. So yes, that's a scary one.
Wow.
That final word on that, Dr. Burgess, it's a scary one.
It's a scary one.
Okay. Good.
That's right.
Okay. Anything else? Anybody have any other comments, questions? And if not, like I said, next week we'll be, we have Dr. Gersh back with us again next week. And after that, the next week after that, we have Dr. Hobbs. He's a naturopath who's very active in the functional medicine world. So I'll say thank you, Joel, for another fabulous presentation. And
Thank you, everybody.
I got one more mess. Somebody, as I mentioned, got a thank you from Sylvia. So you'll thank Sylvia, Dr. Burgess. I'll thank Sylvia myself. Thank you, Sylvia. So, okay, so thank you all for being here. Thank you for supporting us. Let us know if you have something to present. If you have a presenter, let us know about it. There are endless Tuesdays for me to fill. So we do our best to to do timely topics and interesting and things that come up along the way. So thank you all for being here. We will have this up probably within 48 to 72 hours on our website, aosrd.org/webinars. Okay. All the webinars are recorded there. Last week's there, we even got a from last week's we got a transcript also there. So
Wow.
okay. Thank you all. Thank you, Joel.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Good night. And one last thing. If you're in the Lake Tahoe area, Nevada Osteopathic Medical Association's winter conference starts tomorrow and goes through Saturday. I'll be speaking on Friday afternoon on controversies in gynecological hormone replacement on Friday night, and on Saturday morning we're going to be doing traumatic brain injury and mental conditions. So if you're so inclined, NOMA has I think 34 credits if you can make it, and I think they have an online presence also. If you go to noma.org, you can sign up with them. I have nothing to do with them. Dr. Richline has considering a lecture on OMT, what I learned. So here's my email, Dr. Richline, and you can get in touch with me and we'll see if we can't work that out. Okay. Oh, wait a minute. I went to Dr. Cruz. So here, there it is. He's not there anymore. Okay, there it is. Okay, so Dr. Richline, give me a jingle, or here's my text. We'll see what we can do about getting some OMT in there also. Okay. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you, Joel. Thank you, everybody, for participating. And we'll see you again next week. Same time, same station.
Amen. Hoorah.
Amen.
Doesn't want to let me end it.